This video tutorial presents an introduction to the Express Prognostic Candidates Report, a report that helps the analyst to identify the specific failure modes in a system for which it would be most desirable to develop prognostics. In Express, the Prognostic Candidates Report must be generated from within a FMICA study so that all failure effects that have been defined hierarchically at different levels of the system can be used to determine the end item severity of each failure. So let's create a FMICA study for this model, which is the sample ABS model that's included with each installation of Express. Now, you don't have to actually calculate the FMICA chart in order to invoke this report. Simply select Prognostic Candidates from the Reports menu, and then this Settings dialog will appear. Notice that there are 4 sections to this dialog: Section Control, Ranking Criteria, Filters, and Report Format. The settings in each of these 4 sections are examined in other videos in this series. For this overview, let's focus on the 3 ranking criteria in the middle of the dialog: failure probability, maximum severity, and replacement time. These are the 3 factors that can be taken into account as individual failure modes are ranked. By taking failure probability into consideration, prognostic recommendations can focus on those failures that are most likely to occur and will therefore benefit the most from being prognosed. The second factor, maximum severity, ensures that prognostics are recommended for those failures that are most severe. Whereas these first 2 factors reflect the criticality of each failure, the third factor, replacement time, focuses on mission readiness. If failures that take a long time to repair can be prognosed sufficiently in advance, then maintenance can potentially be scheduled in such a way that it minimizes the impact of that pending failure upon overall mission readiness. Now, the 3 numbers in this section, 30, 50, and 15, specify the relative importance of each factor. In another video in this series, we will explain how the actual rankings are calculated. For now, let's just notice that for this run of the report, failure severity is the most important criteria, followed by failure probability. Replacement time, although it will be taken into consideration, has been assigned a somewhat lower priority. So let's run the report by clicking on the Generate button. Notice that, by default, the report has 2 sections: a summary block at the top, followed by a list of prognostic candidates. The Prognostics Candidates lists contains, in this case, the top 25 failures for which it would be desirable to develop prognostics. For each prognostic candidate, the abbreviations of both the failure mode and its associated item are listed, along with the final ranking that's been calculated for that failure mode. Based on the options selected in the Report Settings dialog, this report can contain additional columns listing the data that were used to calculate the individual rankings. Just below the Prognostic Candidates list, the specified ranking criteria and scope of the report are listed. Notice that under Scope, it specifies that prognosed failures have been excluded from the list. In other words, the list contains only failure modes that are not already covered by a prognostic definition within Express. We'll look at how this works in another video in this series. At the top of the report is the Summary section. This section contains 2 pairs of metrics. The first pair gives the average failure probabilities for the 25 failure modes in the Prognostic Candidates list, and for all failure modes in the design. This allows the analyst to compare the likelihood of one of these candidates failing to the overall likelihood of failure. The second pair gives the expected or failure probability weighted repair times for the 25 failure modes in the Prognostics Candidates lists and for all failure modes in the design. This allows the analyst to compare the expected time to repair one of these failures with the overall expected repair time for that system. If prognostics have not been defined within the Express model, then the analyst should expect that the average values for prognostic candidates will tend to exceed those for all failures in the model, since the failure modes were ranked based on these criteria. When prognostic definitions have already been created in Express, however, then it's certainly possible for the averages calculated across the entire design to exceed those calculated across the prognostic candidates list, since the list by default excludes failure modes that are already prognosed, presumably those that best meet some of the ranking criteria. As we'll see in another video in this series, this filter can be easily removed so that the candidates list reflects the failure modes that would be most desirable to prognose, even if they are already prognosed. This concludes this video introduction to the Prognostic Candidates Report in Express.